Good evening and welcome to The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. I'm Andy Hodges. You know, they say there's two things that unite all Zimbabweans. One is our belief in God, and two, most of us, if not all of us, go to church pretty much every week. Now, in a few months, Zimbabwe goes to the polls. And have you ever wondered what role the church is supposed to play in politics? For example, what, if anything, should pastors say about politics from the pulpit? Does the Bible tell us how to vote? Here's what the Bible actually says. It says, let the church be the church. The church's highest calling and purpose for living is to fulfill the spiritual, eternal, invisible kingdom of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The church's goal is to exalt Christ and to preach, teach, and model the message of redemption over and above anything else. But what does that look like? How does the church be the church when it comes to the area of politics? To help me unpack these issues, I'm joined this evening by Admire Mtizwa, who is a Director for Church, Peace and Just Societies at the Zimbabwe Council of Churches. And I'm also joined by Dr. Locadia Shayumunda, Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace in Zimbabwe, Coordinator for Harare. Our topic tonight on The Chase, Election 2023. Is the church a key player? Join me and my guest tonight live on The Chase. Welcome back. This is The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. Our discussion this evening, Election 2023. Is the church a key player? Of course, this is our continuing election series that we will be continuing over the next few months, and in fact, up to and possibly beyond the elections, the harmonized elections to be held this year in Zimbabwe 2023. As I said, I'm joined in studio by Admire Mtizwa, Director for Church, Peace and Just Societies at the Zimbabwe Council of Churches, and Dr. Locadia Shayumunda, Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace in Zimbabwe, Coordinator for Harare. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Chase.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy.
Now, Locadia, let me start with you. Now, we're officially in the 2023 election season. Your view, from your perspective, are citizens guaranteed, you think, a peaceful pre-election, election day, and post-election? What do you feel that's happening on the ground?
It's very difficult to answer that question, Andy, because what we see happening already in different areas in communities does not point at a peaceful election as we brace ourselves towards the 2023 election. Already we have had some pockets of the areas, like in Murewa, where elderly people were beaten, and a video was taken. It went viral. It is not only that only example that we can speak of. There are several of them, and that alone doesn't point at a peaceful, free and fair election as we go towards 2023 election.
Let me ask you exactly the same question. Your viewpoint, as the Zimbabwe Council of Churches, we've spoken many times before. What are you seeing on the ground as a ZCC? Do you believe that citizens in Zimbabwe will be guaranteed, or at least can expect, a pre-election, election day and post-election free of violence?
Thank you, Andy. What we are seeing on the ground points to exactly what Locadia has said, that we do not foresee a peaceful election. We are seeing pockets of violence emerging, but also as the Zimbabwe Council of Churches, we engage in what we call scenario mapping and reimagination processes. And from the series that we have conducted, generally they are pointing towards a violent election. In addition to that, we also are running what we call the National Pulse. Of course, we'll be launching the second edition of our National Pulse report, where we take stock of the current pressing issues in the nation. And as it relates to the issue of people's views regarding the upcoming election, nearly 70% of the key informants we have reached to, they are saying there is high likelihood that the election will be violent.
Now, I will say, and I will remind you that all views expressed on The Chase are those of our guests and do not reflect the views of Zim Papers 1980 Limited or ZTN Prime. Admire, you know, it's interesting because one of the things that comes up in research that really leads to violence is winners or losers accepting results. I think this is the key. It doesn't matter where you are, whether it be council, whether it be local or urban councils, whether it be at high levels. The point is that we have to accept that you lose and we have to accept that we win. And also, it appears, according to some commentators, that already some politicians are actually saying that they've already won, really priming their supporters to win.
Yes.
Hang on, sorry, before we carry on, please keep that in mind. We're going to have to take a short break, so please don't go away. We'll continue this discussion. So after break, election 2023, is the church a key player? Please don't go away. The Chase will be right back.
Engithi days etekasi siphila labantu sikhamba labantu sihlala labantu engithi days etekasi agriculture the lifestyle.
There are many days of our lives, but there's nothing ever like a guava. I mean, day at ekas. It's a whole. Sing happy.
Tumbane country park emakwekwe empopoma inkethe lufefe lesizinto chabanana tava the culture the lifestyle.
Yes, khona lapha emakhokhoba lo pe mula twasemagwekwe
entombane kogugu
because of iphumula okamashobana umzilikazi inketha zibheki baba esizinda baba. My name is Mzo 7 AK Mr. Gaga Gugu.
khulumis kiwa nge yekhu
engithi days etekasi siphila labantu sikhamba labantu sihlala labantu engithi days etekasi tava the culture the lifestyle.
There are many days of our lives, but there's nothing ever like a guava. I mean, day at ekas. It's a whole. Sing happy.
Tumbane country park emakwekwe empopoma inkethe lufefe lesizinto chabanana tava the culture the lifestyle.
Yes, khona lapha emakhokhoba lo pe mula twasemagwekwe
entombane kogugu
because of iphumula okamashobana umzilikazi inketha zibheki baba esizinda baba. My name is Mzo 7 AK Mr. Gaga Gugu.
khulumis kiwa nge yekhu
Welcome back. You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. This, of course, is ZTN Prime, broadcasting to you live from ZTN studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. Our discussion today, election 2023. Is the church a key player? Now, Admire, before the breather, I was asking you the question about the fact that you can have politicians, according to commentators, who can, even pre-election, even before we've got into full election mode, incite their followers to some form of violence by declaring that they're already the winner. So as a result, supporters may feel if they lose, they have been cheated, and if they won, good luck. And I think that could be a bit of a problem. What are your views on what commentators are saying?
Yes, and what determines violence, it's not really what happens on the election day. So the whole electoral cycle the developments within the electoral cycle determine the different kinds of violence that can happen within the election period. So, of course, the issue of already predicting or trying to incite that I win the election, it's not. It's actually something that contributes to violence. But I think there are quite many factors that also contribute to violence, apart from having the political players declaring themselves winners. We know that issues to do with the general electoral environment, when it comes to contestations in relation to the process itself, I think recently there were debates around the delimitation reports where many people were querying about the transparency, the openness, and the levels of consultations when it comes to the whole process relating to the delimitation report. We have also, from the church, there are certain segments of the church that have also gone to publicly, saying statements that we believe they are quite reckless in as far as trying to contribute to a peaceful, credible, and fair electoral process is concerned. Some players from segments of the church, they have said this and that candidate is going to win the election. I don't think we need to do that in the spirit of promoting a peaceful and credible election. So generally, my view is that we need to be guided by the laws of the country, and the players within the electoral process need to ensure that the playing field is level for everyone to effectively participate without necessarily contributing to or threatening the peace that we desire our election to be characterized with.
Okay, if I remember the Archdiocese, and I can't remember the year, but it was some years ago where I think one of your archbishops or one of your senior church officials actually did get involved in politics and made comments that were very political in nature. And of course, as I said at the beginning of the show, we believe our pastors, we listen to our pastors, and sometimes we take guidance from our pastors. Your view, I mean, do you believe that the church should make an opinion about politics? You think that they should actually weigh in to the political area? And I think my second follow-up question to that is, do you think that the church has played a role to preach tolerance before the polls, before, during, and after the polls? Have you done enough?
Thank you so much. Maybe I would start with the last question, whether the church has done a lot in preaching tolerance during this period, or even in the past. We've had elections since independence. The church has been doing quite a lot. I must admit that the church stands as the voice of the voiceless, so to speak. And also at times the church enables the voiceless, those people that we label, or those people who never have the opportunity like I have today to come in here and talk about elections, just to have some space to conversate around issues to do with politics. But the church, like I said, it has done quite a lot, and recently we've also published a statement talking about elections, that those who are going to contest for elections needs to also to preach a message of truth, honest, and they need also to even sign some peace pledges, which they adhere to and respect. But more importantly, the issue of tolerance is a big issue that, when you go out there, the reason why we always have violence in our elections is because people do not tolerate each other's choices. If one chooses to support a given party, one doesn't feel okay with that, and one doesn't want to respect that. And this is the message that we continue to preach. And because the church has structures at local level, those structures are quite active, and we use through those structures to preach this message, this gospel of tolerance, gospel of peace. And we continue to do so, not only during the time when we're having elections. Elections comes after every 5 years. And the church has continued to do this even after elections. So it's something that is done regularly. Although our situation, it always lapses into violence, especially during elections. And that has got a very long history.
But what do you say to criticism, though, that in the past, the church, particularly some of your leaders, have actually, as critics or commentators state, have actually got involved in the political process. They've made political statements. Would you say, was that a truth or not? I mean, I'm looking back. I'm not talking about recently. I'm talking maybe about 10, 15 years ago. There were some instances where archbishops and so forth were making political comments. What would you say to that?
I would want to answer that taking from the provisions that are in our constitution, that every person, every eligible person over the age of 18 has the right to vote. And not only voting, but also has the right to even stand to be elected if they so feel that they have what it takes to lead, right? And church leaders, by virtue, I mean, they provide spiritual guidance, they provide moral support, and they see what is happening on the ground. At times, as also human beings, they are human beings just like anyone else. They're entitled to their opinions. And I'm sorry, I wouldn't want to indulge into discussing the opinion of specific church leaders who have said something around elections. But personally, I feel...
broad question.
Yes.
Because as leaders, though, what they say matters. I think that's important. They may be different from me, for example. I may make a comment and I'm just Andy Hodges. But if I'm full of a big congregation, what I say does matter, look at it.
Yes, it does. But it also depends whether they say it from the church's perspective, right? Like they are representing the church, or is their personal opinion. Okay. Right now, as I talk to you, at times I'm actually saying, according to me or my opinion on this. So if they say it from a personal perspective, it should be taken that way. Yes, they have a large follower, and people, when they follow them, they tend to listen to what they say. But look, these things, they do happen.
I hear you. Admire, you can comment on that too, Admire. But there's also one issue that I would like to talk to you about, because the Zimbabwe Congress of Churches, ZCC, actually at some point, and I think I've asked you this before, you actually called for some form of moratorium on elections. You believe that possibly a 7-year break up to 2029, and in fact maybe we should put a halt on all elections, because one thing that is very clear in Zimbabwe is political intolerance. There's no doubt about it. I think I can say that with confidence. We do not tolerate political views that are opposed to each other's, and I think that can become a huge problem, particularly as it relates to violence in elections.
Yes, and so I will comment first on the leaders who have made political statements. And in my view, we believe that the church is the salt and light of the world. And in many instances, at times, we try to limit the church to the pulpit, when in actual fact, the church is always there in the society. The church, when we talk about the church, we have leaders, church leaders, we have the congregants. When we talk about workers, remember we are 85% of this country being Christians. So when we talk about the church, we are talking about the people that we interface with every day. So when church leaders make comments about the state of affairs, of politics, of technology, of economy, that is the role of the church. And the
so they're representing their congregants. Is this what their voice is really what their congregants are saying to them? Is this the point you're...
They have to contribute to the amplification of the voice of the congregants, because they are with the people in the society. As Lokadia earlier indicated, that the church is widespread. It's deep in the communities where people are. The pastor interfaces on daily basis with congregants, and they share the pressing issues, they share their views. So many times when the leaders then speak, they are speaking on behalf of the congregants.
I want to ask you...
But you had asked about, specifically about the moratorium, the Sabbath call, for us, it's great that this is something that the majority of citizens are still talking about. We strongly believed that as a nation, we have not yet reached that level where we can have an election that is free, that is peaceful, that is credible, that set the foundations for socio-economic transformation of this country. You know, our desire is that the state of well-being for the people improves. You see the government is making a lot of efforts to try and address the foundational issues that are affecting the country. But whenever elections comes, they disrupt that flow, the thinking towards development, you know. Immediately we are focused on elections, and we are so divided, you know.
Yeah,
so
but I need to jump in there now because it's very clear. Of course, our constitution is very clear. Every 5 years we have elections. That is just the way it is. All political parties know that, and we've had that obviously since independence. So, first of all, what made you make that call? What did you see on the ground that made you make that call? And secondly, did you actually do any form of survey, whether amongst the members, whether amongst ordinary Zimbabweans, to identify whether that is exactly what they wanted, or is this just something that your leadership came up with?
You know, as the church, as I said earlier, we also engage in several scientific processes over and above the day-to-day interaction with the congregants. I talked about the scenario mapping processes. In 2016, 2017, before 2018 elections, we engaged in national envisioning processes where we're trying to go deep to the root of why are we struggling, why are we failing to make progress as a nation, what are the key foundational issues that have to be addressed. And that is where the Sabbath call was coming from. And so it was informed, indeed, by the masses, by what people think. And it was going beyond we understand that elections are constitutional, but we're trying to say over and above elections as a constitutionally provided process of leadership change, what kind of other alternative are we that we can take to try and unlock and address those foundational issues that we are facing as a nation.
Some may even call that Sabbath call interfering in politics, because one side may say, thank you, we don't want elections because we'll stay in power. The other one may say, but hang on, the church is actually trying to call a moratorium election, so we don't get into power. So that can be perceived as a political call as well, can it not?
And I think I stated earlier that the church, when we say that this is a political statement by the church, we need to unpack what we really mean, because politics affect every part of Christian life. Decisions by politics, they affect the bread and butter. If you go to the prayer of Jesus Christ, he says, let the kingdom come. He was not talking about the spiritual life. He was talking about the earthly life. Here on earth, this is where politics is. So how do we how do we want church leaders? How do we want the church not to speak to issues that matter for Zimbabweans? So if it's politics that is preventing the country from achieving the fullness of life, both here on earth and their spiritual life, let's discuss politics. Let the church contribute to the kind of politics that we desire. We are talking about tolerance. Can the church contribute to the citizens to accept that we are a multi-party democracy? We are not a one-party state. The Constitution provides that they are different political formations, and it's the right of the citizens to choose for the party that is of their choice. Can the church not speak about that? Is it political?
I think that's exactly the topic of the chase this evening. Now, of course, we have to take a break. Now, after the breather, we'll continue this very interesting discussion. Election 2023. Is the church a key player? Don't go away. The chase. We'll be right back. Whether suspects will escape the net, that is the question. Wasting no time, I fastened my seatbelt and headed to where it all happened. It's also alleged that he got a kitchen knife and sack at his mother's home and went back to slice the corpse into pieces. 3 tiny sets of prints were visible. In manufacturing, group chief executives in the upper quartile are earning $7,200 or the Zimbabwe dollar equivalent. They also get to drive an SUV and a Mercedes-Benz of their choice. In just 3 weeks, the prices of goods and services have jumped 3-fold, and citizens are asking questions.
Diplomatic Passport every Sunday at 7 p.m.
Engithi days etekasi siphila labantu sikhamba labantu sihlala labantu engithi days etekasi agriculture the lifestyle.
There are many days of our lives, but there's nothing ever like a guava. I mean, day at ekas. It's a hot. Sing happy.
Tumane country park emakwekwe empopoma inkethe lufefe lesizinto chabalala cover the culture the lifestyle.
Yes, khona lapha emakhokhoma lo pe mula.
Just emakwekwe.
Entomba nekogulu.
Because of iphumula okamashobana. Umzilikazi.
Inketha zibheki baba. Esizinda baba.
My name is Mzo 7AK Mr. Gaga Gugu.
Khuluma isikhiwa nge. Thank you.
Welcome back. You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. This is ZTN Prime, broadcasting to you live from ZTN Studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. Now, our topic tonight, election 2023. Is the church a key player? Now, I'd like to get your views, please. So please send your views via our Facebook page, In Papers TV Network, via our Twitter handle at ZTN Prime. But I'd be interested to know what you think the church's role should be in politics. Should they be involved in politics or not? I'd like to know your views. Locadia, you know, we talk about dialogue and we talk about peacefulness and the church's role in making the environment peaceful. I suppose one way that can be achieved, and this is my question, whether you have done that, and I'll ask you the same question. Have you managed to gather or at least speak to all the political players? I mean, we have 133 political parties that contested the last election. Of course, we do have major parties, the Triple C, and of course the ruling parties, LNPF, and of course not forgetting all the other political parties that stand all across the country throughout all the elections. What have you tried to do to get them all together, to put them in a room, so to speak, and say, preaching tolerance, preaching lack of violent conversations, lack of dialogue that shouldn't really incite violence? What have you done from your perspective?
Thank you so much, Andy. Indeed, it's work in progress. It's something that has been done by the church over the years. We have had some national dialogues that were organized at national level by CCJP National Office. We've had also national dialogues which brought together all political players at Suvera House, which is a church institution in Chishawasha. And we continue to do the same. Recently, we've just been working on a program where we are going to rope in all these political players and have them at a round table where we discuss issues to do with peace, because it is the church's role to guarantee peace for the nation, for the citizens, as they go towards elections. And like I said, when we talk about peace, we are not only referring to their election, but be it the time of elections and beyond the time of elections, we want people to live peaceful. So we are on it, and we are working with political parties. It is not easy, let me admit. It is not easy. These people always claim to be very busy. But even at local level, one way of roping them in was to organize some workshops on social cohesion, just bringing people together, the leaders, elected and appointed leaders, to come and conversate with the citizens. And this has happened. We have had opportunities where we met with ward councillors, for example. We've had opportunities where some MPs, they also show up in our workshops, and we discuss about the environment, we discuss about a peace. And some of them, they even went to a point of also signing some peace pledges. And by signing...
I want to talk to you about that, yeah. And you have different parties in the same room, and they're talking properly, are they not? It's interesting because, of course, this is the issue. People can talk well in a room, and then the moment they leave the room...
They are complete different animals. And it's quite surprising because when they gather together for these workshops that I made reference to, they tend to relate very well with one another. And at times they even augment each other's points and, different opinions. But when they come out, you realize it's something different. That's why we came up with these peace pledges, that once they sign, it's something that one commits to do, to maintain peace, to preach the gospel of peace.
But once again, as we know, pieces of paper are pieces of paper.
Exactly.
Let me ask you the same question. ZCC, have you tried to have or have had dialogue with stakeholders, political parties, even the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, whoever's involved, really to preach the word of the Lord, to say, guys, tolerance, virtues, loving your fellow man. I mean, these are the tenets of Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Andy. As the Zimbabwe Council of Churches, we have really tried to reach out to political parties, working with our colleagues, the ZCBC, the Evangelical Fellowship, also the Apostolic Sect, the Judas Caesar. In November and October last year, in 2022, we managed to reach out to 3 key political parties, ZANU-PF, Citizen Coalition for Change, and the MDCT, led by Douglas Monzora. We're reaching out because of our reading of the context that we are likely to have a contested election. We are seeing that there is high possibility of violence, and we're trying to say, how do we work together to ensure that the upcoming elections will be free, fair, and credible?
And what was the response?
But also to...
What was the response from the parties? Did they come and sit around the table? Did they heed your call to sit down and let's talk about peace?
I think one of the key issues is that there was concern that actually, for sure that in 2018, we had 2 main political candidates, and they had quite a significant, each of them had a quite significant number of votes. But since 2018, those 2 key leaders have never met. It was an issue of concern, I think. And of course, efforts continue to try and say, how do we bridge the gap? But of course, there are obviously some challenges. But I'm happy that we agreed on some quite important areas of working together in terms of ensuring that we contribute to a peaceful election. We do not only meet the political parties, we met with 5 Chapter 12 commissions, the NPRC, Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, the Gender Commission, Media Commission, and we're trying to say, how do we work together as Zimbabweans, as key players in the upcoming election, but also in trying to respond to some of the pressing issues that we are facing at the moment. And of course, there are agreed roadmaps in terms of trying to work together and cooperate going forward to contribute. What we can only do is to contribute as the church
to try and
alone.
Convince and speak to, and really speak to the common sense, I think, if that's the right word.
Of course, and we have to find consensus on some of the pressing issues. And I think the engagements that we engaged in we're trying to build consensus on certain key issues that are quite pressing, and there will come a time when you need to...
I'm going to ask you both this question, but I'll start with you, Ed Meyer. You know, one area that commentators believe the church can play a key role, sort of if people look at the church as a neutral party, with luck, you know, parties should look at the church and say the church is for all of us because we all believe in God and we all love God. But what about the church playing a role in negotiating between the parties? I've had the parties here on the Chase, and each of them has said, yes, we will sign a code of conduct. Yes, we will sign a peace pledge. How far have you done? What have you done as a church, as HCC, to try and make this code of conduct and this peace pledge, I think we spoke, you'll get to you, Locadia, a reality?
As I said, and there are processes in terms of coming to a peace pledge. It's not only the church that will be involved, but we also need to involve key bodies that are quite important in as far as having a peace pledge that is binding and that can really be enforceable to contribute to a peaceful environment.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Enforceable.
Enforceable.
Yeah, because I can sign anything now and it will make no difference when the election fever hits me and violence rears its ugly head.
Yeah, so we really want to avoid a situation where you just invite people into the room and they sign to a peace pledge or a code of conduct, but after signing they go and practice what is contrary to what they have signed to. So we are working on modalities, working with other, the key bodies, you know. In this process, you also need to engage with ZEC itself. And at the moment, ZEC was praised with the delimitation report, so they could not largely commit, you know.
We've only got a few months left, though, haven't we? I mean, the elections should be between June and August. I mean, that's July and August. Yes. That's literally tomorrow. As
we have been reaching out to them in terms of trying to convince and bring them to the table to work towards a peace pact. We hope that once the delimitation report is out, possibly they will come on board and we work together with NPRC. We discussed some issues, and we are happy that
they came on board on the idea.
The past 2 months, we were working together in promoting some local peace councils to respond to issues.
Look, let me bring you in there. You, as I said, you did start talking about a peace pledge. I'd like you to expand on that, and also whether you have, as ZCC has done, a process of trying to put in this code of conduct for elections. Okay, how successful or not have you been? I mean, you say people are signing, but do you feel that even though they're signing, is that enough?
Thank you, Andy. Signing only is not enough. Like Admire has already alluded to, it has to be implemented. And the way it is done, Andy, is that these peace pledges are signed in the presence of community members who happens to be the citizens or the electorate. And it is made clear at that gathering that this is your leader who is campaigning to be your leader after the next election, and you should hold him or her accountable should violence erupt in this particular constituency. So this is just but one of a process that we have taken as a church. But like Admire has also said, we are engaging the various bodies, like, you know, the 12 commissions. We are also working with them, and we are also working even with the security sector. We rope them in, because at times, you know, you see things happening under their guard and you wonder why such things are happening. And when those people also come, take for instance the security sector, we also make them sign. And we tell them to adhere and respect what they have signed. And we also make it open that, you know, people in their area should hold them accountable should violence erupt in that particular constituency.
You know, yes,
if I can add, Andy, that also when we are looking at this issue of violence, let's not only focus on the political players at the highest level. What has also contributed to violence is the lack of tolerance at the local level. And I think we need also to have efforts to address the citizens themselves, because one of the issues that we have seen is that if two people coming from different political parties, the leaders themselves, if they come together and they are seen by their supporters being together, they are labeled and they are immediately asked as sellouts and so forth. You know.
But what if hypothetically the leaders of the main political parties were seen meeting each other and talking to each other? Surely that could, and I say could, and I'm talking hypothetically here, it could send a message to their supporters to say, we can be tolerant, we can support different parties, we can vote for different people. However, we're also willing to meet and talk to each other. But you yourself have said, since 2018, the two leaders, according to you, have not met. Do you think that that could influence violence in terms of non-violence in election time?
Yes, it's a clear indicator of lack of tolerance at the highest level, where you actually need that tolerance to, leading by example. You need the top leaders to demonstrate that we are tolerant and we accept diversity, we cherish diversity. But if it's not there at the highest level, of course, it's a cause of concern. But, my point is that if we also over-focus at the highest level without also trying to cultivate tolerance at the local level, we will not win the game.
Because in a way, when you look at some of the post-election violence or pre-election violence, it is happening out there. It's happening in the rural areas. It's happening in towns outside of the main cities. It isn't happening amongst the top leaders. It's happening amongst supporters at rallies and so forth. Yes. And so would you yourself call for the leaders to meet, to show a face? I'm not sure whether it's both two main leaders or all the leaders just to meet, to sign a pledge, just to show their supporters that there can be tolerance. There can be people meeting and having different views. You can vote for someone else and it's okay. What would you call for?
Yes, that's what we are aiming at. That's exactly what we are aiming at, because most of the work of the church is targeting the grassroots people. Like Admire is saying, we cannot leave out the people who go out and perform the violence. But at the same time, if we could bring together all the political leaders and they sign a peace pledge in the presence of people, and that is also shown to all their supporters out there, that is a signal that will give people that our leaders, for the first time, had to come together and they are pledging peace. And we can also do it. I think that will work. And we are actually working towards having a national dialogue which will bring together all the political players.
Now it's time for us to take a breather. Of course, you're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. This is Etienne Prime. Don't go away, The Chase. We'll be right back.
Right. Unomkana manje wona uziviti muri muZimbabwe hle ZTN RTS channel 294 ZTN yakubatika ipapo saka manake ekuti munongochuna chete pa 294 but yes makutoona chi ZTN ipapo ta pamakutoona chi programs ese avana tepfenyura evaimbi venyu nemaprograms akasiyana akati one day zvapo ipapo wamuona nyore muzwa nyore mufamba nyore uchitarisa uchi paZTN channel 294 paDS.
Welcome back. You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. This is Etienne Prime, broadcasting to you live from Harare, Zimbabwe. Our topic of discussion today, election 2023. Is the church a key player. Now, look at it. Before the breather, we were talking about your belief that it would be a good sign that that all the political leaders got together in one room or in one place and showed their supporters that, you know what, we're pledging peace, we're pledging non-violence, we're telling our supporters, because they have done. I mean, the president, Idi Mnangagwa, has said no to violence. He's called on his supporters not to engage in violence. But of course, there are going to be some malcontents out there, and I'm sure Triple C, Nelson Chamisa, has probably called on his supporters not to get themselves involved in violence. But that can happen, and as we've seen before, it has happened. So please continue with your thought.
Okay, thank you so much. Just speaking from the statement that the president has pledged that we want a non-violent election this time around, he has to demonstrate it. And one way of doing it is when the church invites these political leaders, if he would actually show first and be part of the discussion, be part of the dialogue where we discuss peace, having a peaceful election, that will send a big signal to supporters out there that if the men of his caliber can take heed of a call from the church and can pledge to maintain peace throughout, prior, during, and after the election. And after the election, it means even accepting winning or losing. That is very important, because then the people who are at the grassroots, who are mostly involved in the violence, when they hear it from the horse's mouth, it sends a different message altogether. Because at the moment as we speak, there is a lot of distortion when you go out there. I was out in the rural area on Tuesday, and, you know, believe me, it was at a funeral, and what people were saying there was completely out of context. Where they are taking it from, I don't even know. And at times, these are overzealous people who even tarnish the image of the party that they belong to. And if leaders would come together and pledge peace, including our current president, that will help this situation.
I think what is important, I'll let you comment, but I think what is important here is that if we can, for a moment, remove the mantle of state president, which of course Dr. Idi Mnangagwa is, and look at him as the leader of a political party, that is who are signing these peace pledges and code of conduct, the political parties, not necessarily him signing as the state president. He's signing as the leader of his party. Admire, you wanted to comment?
Yes, and I wanted to say this, that from the engagement that we did with political party, I think one of the common concern was that when we fight as Zimbabweans, we are not really fighting for Zimbabwe. We have reached the level of selfishness that is so concerning.
It's looking power. That's an interesting way of putting it, power.
Yes.
Because it appears that the election rears its ugly head throughout all African elections, and it seems to be about, as critics say, power.
It's about power, but not only power, but also it's about livelihood, given the state of our economy. People who are right at the grassroots, who are engaging in violence, it's not really because they have been sanctioned to do that. But some is because of the leaders who are at that local level. We have given them something to eat for that day, and they are told to engage in violence, to mobilize votes. So at times when we look at the issue of violence, that's why I'm emphasizing, let's not only look at the highest level, because violence is also happening.
Look at the wards, the villages, the rural areas, where supporters are.
It's also about the constituents' politics. That's why violence, it's both intra and inter-political parties. If it was only sanctioned by the leaders, then we were not supposed to see intra-political party.
Of course, because
violence.
they have all called for non-violence, so you would think there should be no violence, but in fact, that isn't the case.
So I really wonder, as we are looking forward to the upcoming elections, we really need to have this a broader understanding of the nature of violence, because it's not only inter-political party violence, but also within political violence. I think from our long-term election observers, today we received a report from Nyanga. There was some form of intra-political party violence.
No, it's an interesting point, that, because one thing that I heard from a commentator reading when I was doing some research was the issue that if internally you can have violence in your own internal elections, whether it be for constituency seats, internally within a party, what message are you giving to your supporters? They're watching their own people fighting within their party. Therefore, does that mean, as this commentator said, it's okay now to engage in violence against people of another party because we're already doing it? Look at it. Let me get your view on that.
Yeah, I mean, this culture of violence is so engrossed in people to extent where, you know, it's very difficult to say how people, as a people, as a nation, we can come out of that. Because like you rightfully put it, intra-party fights. What are we doing? What message are we sending out there? Obviously, we are sending a wrong signal. People would think that's the right way to do. That's the way to do things. And then they start fighting each other. But like he has also pointed out, people engage in these violent acts because some of them, they benefit, but benefit just for a short while. And then that's it. After the election, the next 4 years before we go to another election, they are back to zero. And they are waiting for that time again. But you see it has become a vicious circle where people are just becoming violent in every way. At home, in the community.
Right. It can become institutionalized, if I can call it that.
Yes.
In fact, it can even transcend to your personal life, because if your politicians can fight in violence, we can fight amongst brother and sister violence, then why can't I do it at home? Of course, horrible GBV, etc. But anyway, but let me ask you this, and you said this earlier, okay, I want to start with you. You said that the church leaders can have their own personal opinions. They can also represent what they feel they're getting the message from their constituents. I believe we started talking about this at the beginning of the show. But then is it possible that the church can actually come out and support a particular party, a particular candidate, based on what you've just said, in that it is a personal view, it is your leader saying, this is who I believe should be president? I mean, do you think that's possible in the current environment, or do you think that's what the church could or should do? What would you say?
Some personal church leaders may do that, but the church's position is very clear. The church remains apolitical, non-partisan. What they simply do is, there is this responsibility of citizens to vote. It is a responsibility. And refraining from voting, it's like a sin. When we look at Christians, yes, it's their responsibility.
Not voting, in your opinion, is a sin.
Yeah, you should go and vote as a citizen. It is your right to go and select the leaders that will lead you for the next 5 years. And it affects everything in your entire life. Your children, the future of your children is affected by that voting. And if you do not vote, you have actually voted in silence, because you leave it for others to do that.
That leads me to a question. And then again, that could imply that the church, Admire, could start getting involved in voter registration. Because if you're implying that it's a sin if you don't vote, and you are asking your congregants to go and vote, is that not some form of voter registration drive?
Yes, and the church has to encourage citizens to go and register to vote. We are actually running a campaign that I pray, I vote. I pray, I vote. And one of the key pillars of that campaign is to say, as Christians, we need to go and register to vote. So we are doing voter mobilization, working with...
But voter mobilization in an apolitical way.
Yes.
This is where the blurred line comes in, doesn't it? Because can you say go vote registration apolitically?
No, we can't. We can't pick a political party. We are apolitical, as Lokadi has just said. But of course, individuals, the Christians themselves, each and every one of them will vote for the part of his or her choice.
Now, I only have just a couple of minutes left, so I'll give you a minute each. I'd like you to answer this direct question. What role should the church play? I know we've talked about this the whole of the chase this evening, but I'd like to ask you directly, so, and you can speak there to your congregants, to people who, like all Zimbabweans who believe in God and love God. What role should the church play in Zimbabwean politics? What influence should they have on citizens of the country? And do you believe that there are no blurred lines between what the church is and what politics are? I'll give you a minute each to respond. Let me start with you.
Okay. The church must continue to provide the moral support, spiritual guidance, as well as guaranteeing a peaceful environment. and also teaching people about their responsibility, which I alluded to earlier on. Their responsibility when it comes to election is to register and vote.
Right, I unfortunately have to jump in there. Maya, your 30 seconds of your final word based on my question.
The church has to continue to mobilize Christians and citizens in general to go and register and vote. The church has also to contribute to electoral observation so that the credibility of the election is also recognized on the basis of the reports of the church. But we need to continue engaging in dialogue towards ensuring that we contribute to a peaceful, free and fair election.
Maya Mutizwa, Director for Church, Peace and Just Society, the Zimbabwe Council of Churches. Dr. Lakedia Shayomunda, Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace in Zimbabwe, Coordinator for RI. Thank you very much for appearing on The Chase today.
Thank you.
So our topic tonight on The Chase, of course, was election 2023. Is the church a key player? Well, you've heard the discussion here tonight. I'll let you make up your own mind. I'm Andy Hodges. Good night and please, you all be safe.